Good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning, Mrs. Angel. How are you today?
Oh, my goodness. I couldn't be better. I'm living the dream,
That's
as
the
I
way.
always am.
Yes.
Because we have Dr. Shanti Clements with us. Welcome, Dr. Shanti.
Hello,
Yes.
how are you going?
We are fabulous, and we can't wait to get into your story. So we're going to get cracking straight away. So Dr. Shanti Clements, she went to primary school at Ashcroft Public School, Hoxton Park Public School, Our Lady of Mount Carmel School, Griffith East Public School, Mount Pritchard Public School, and Randwick Public School. She went to every public school, basically, to do her primary education. And then for her secondary school, she went to Sydney Girls High School, which is a selective girls' high school in Sydney. That set her up for the most amazing tertiary experience. So as I said, she is a doctor. She has her Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Leadership from University of Sydney. She has an Executive MBA Essentials Certificate from London School of Economics. She has a Masters of Education in Management and Leadership in University of Sydney. She was awarded the position of Honorary Associate at the University of Sydney. She has a Diploma of Education in Primary School in Sydney University. And she kicked it all off at the University of Technology, getting her Bachelor of Communications in Journalism. And she also has a huge range of coaching qualifications as a coach, facilitator, Courageous Conversations. That's one of my personal favorites. Accredited coach for solutions-focused coaching. She is an accredited facilitator with Stephen Covey's The Leader in Me program. She's a team leadership for whole school improvement. She has coaching qualifications in Great Teams, Great Results, which is also another Stephen Covey. And she is a facilitator of Principals Preparation Program. And that's all we've got time for.
Goodness.
So thank you, Shanti, so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
Just kidding. We're going to hear a little bit more about your bio.
There's more.
Because there has been an amazing educational leadership story behind everything that Shanti has done. Talk to us about it, Whitey.
Shanti's ethos is, and I love this, grow great human beings every day. Career highlights include facilitating leadership programs, developing leadership and talent development pathways and accreditation for aspiring teachers, principals and senior executives across the UAE, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and New South Wales. Her professional experiences include Principal of Beauty Point Public School and Seven Hills West Public School, Principal, School Leadership, Principal Coach Mentor, and a Director of Leadership and Teaching Quality in the New South Wales Department of Education, and Head of Leadership at the Tel Al Institute. Lecturer at the University of Sydney and Liverpool Hope University. Her PhD research in educational leadership was published in 2021 and is entitled Leader Identity, Expertise Development and Influence, Exploring Principal Leadership in New South Wales Public Schools. Awards include a finalist at the National Excellence in Teaching Award in 2006 and Australian Schools Plus Commonwealth Bank Teaching Award recipient and inaugural Leadership Fellow in 2017. Unbelievable, that list.
Excited, people.
Wow.
Dr. Shanti Clements is here.
Wow. Oh, there's so much there. There's so much.
It's very
to do life.
Delighted to have you with us.
Wonderful.
So,
thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Whitey.
Shanti is one of the smartest people that I know, and we're so glad that she chose education. So let's kick it off with our favorite question, which is, who is the teacher that has most greatly impacted your life?
It has to be my E04 teacher, Miss Crosby. She was at Mount Pritchard Public School, taught me in 1980, and I was in a E04 class. We had 64 students in the class. So it was like this real pioneering 1970s, open planned. And to have 64 kids in the class was amazing. 2 teachers. And it's still my favorite class if I think about it. But she was beautiful. She was warm. Think of the Partridge Family. Think of, the colours of the Brady Bunch household, orange, yellow, green. And think of miniskirts. And that's Miss Crosby. And I used to just love her, just watch how, you'd go on excursions. She was just so cool and just warm and beautiful. So, and
That's
this
fantastic.
amazing she was. Years ago, I actually tried to find her.
Yeah.
I couldn't find her because she got married. She was single at the time, but she was amazing. I wanted to ring and say thank you to her for being such an amazing teacher.
That is fabulous. And that's what we're all about here. We want to name and fame those amazing teachers so they know that you're still thinking about her this far into the future and the impact that she had on you. And with 64 kids in a class,
wow,
and making you feel seen and loved and noticed, that's no small feat.
Yeah, and what was really amazing about her, which I didn't discover at the time, because one, she was just so cool. She was just glamorous and cool. But she was actually half Indian and half English. And because, I'm mixed myself, she was the first teacher I ever had that came from a multicultural background. And to see this amazing woman, she unconsciously, really, she was like this role model, but also just someone that I could aspire to as a woman, not just as a future educator. So, just amazing.
And all of that, just you're in grade 4. So, those really important formative years where you're noticing those kind of that stuff.
Yeah. And, to think of someone who was very warm and compassionate, for every person in that class of 64 students who felt that they had a personal relationship with this teacher, where they felt that she cared.
Yeah.
And, it goes beyond all that John Hattie, research. You actually felt that you mattered to her.
Yeah.
And that's
Rita Pearson, kids don't learn from people that they don't like. And if you feel that connection to the teacher, then you're picking up everything they're putting down, and you're not just learning the content, you're learning the how she carries herself, and what is it that why am I so drawn to this woman, and why is she so cool, and all of those things.
And she was a team teacher too, because I can just remember the two of them taking the lessons and the humour between the two of them. And it was great to see camaraderie between teachers and how they shared that load. Yeah. I really wish that today's students actually had the opportunity to have a class of 64 with 2 teachers sharing that load every day. It was extraordinary. Yeah. It was an amazing experiment.
Yeah. Well, John Hattie said that class size doesn't matter, but I feel like I'm having things thrown at me right now by
all the teachers in this.
Yes, don't say that. Shut up, Angel.
That's right.
But there you go. It worked for that particular class and that particular situation. That's and it was obviously a pivotal moment in your education. Yeah. But you are a child of educators as well, aren't you?
Yes. So my father was a teacher, and my mother is actually a nurse. But it's interesting. I didn't want to be a teacher growing up. Like, you couldn't have thought of anything worse. So I started off, I wanted to go into journalism. I actually became a journalist. I was a radio journalist for a while, and I also worked in advertising. But then I did some personal development courses and had an epiphany. And that was that you can actually make a difference in people and young people's lives, and a positive difference. And that's why I made the shift from journalism into teaching, because I found that, journalism, you're on the news and everything, but it's all negative. Whereas positive, you can shape lives and you can actually make a difference to young people. And so I ended up making the shift to teaching.
Yeah, that's interesting. My mum's a teacher, and I've got come from a family of teachers as well. And I knew I was always going to do arts. So I just did arts and sort of got into education that way. But I still, so how old do you reckon you were when you made that decision, or that epiphany happened? Because I'm really interested at where people realise something in life and then make drastic decisions.
I would have been 22.
22.
So I finished high school at 17, and then I did what every good girl does: follow their parents' advice. And I did my first year of business. I did UTS at University of Technology, right. And then I did what every bad girl did.
Tell us more, Shanti. Tell us more.
Well, that's actually pretending to go to university for the first semester,
Yep.
And but I actually had made the decision to defer, so I was pretending to go to business, and
what were you doing in
then
that
I ended
time
up.
then?
Yeah, well, I was very, very lucky because I didn't really enjoy business, and I was doing the end of semester assessment with the economics lecturer, and I did the entire 2 hours and 15 minutes. And he said, "How is it that you finished this?" And I said, "Well, I'm just using my psychic ability. It feels like an A, a B, a C, blah, 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 blah." And he went, "What can I do to make sure you never return to this place again?" And I said, "Well," he said, I'd really love to do communications." He said, "Okay, I'll
I'll
endorse
make that
you."
happen for you.
That's right,
Right.
as long as you never return. And he kept his promise.
That's awesome. And you kept your promise too, Dr. Shanti Clements. Like,
Yes.
so it's all about finding your passion, finding your niche, and
Yeah.
everything can't be everybody's niche. Like you've got to
Well,
find your thing, don't you?
yeah, it is. That's the case. Although some of the skills that I use now as a principal,
Yes.
I'm using the business, I'm using the journalism, I'm using all of the teaching skills. But
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm so lucky. I made the right decision. I've been in education now for 30 years.
Yep.
No regrets whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And doing amazing things in education across the world, actually. So Shani's not just having an impact here in Australia. She's doing amazing work with people in many other countries as well, which I want to get to. But before we get to that, I want to hear a bit about, so your dad was a teacher, but your grandma was also a teacher that was doing some pretty life-changing things during the World War. Tell us about that.
So my grandma Alice was an extraordinary woman, and she motivated my father in education to become a teacher. And so during World War II, when the Japanese invaded Singapore, the education system got shut down for about 5 years. So you weren't allowed to teach, you weren't allowed to go to school. But my grandmother illegally kept teaching to ensure that the children still could learn how to read and write. And she was such an inspiration. My grandmother had 10 children, and they had an amazing home that was actually taken over by the Japanese army. But they ended up being in this tiny place where they had 10 kids, one room. You had all the rationing, but she kept going, and she taught every single one of her children resilience, the ability to have tenacity, and every single one of them not only graduated from university, they all went and did postgraduate studies in the UK as well.
Okay.
So my dad ended up going from, having 5 years of education shut off. He ended up going to university in Singapore, or the college at the time, and then went off and did Cambridge as his postgraduate degree before coming out to Australia. But the importance of education, the culture, the richness of literacy was always in the home life, and she not only inspired her own family but the whole community during a really tough period in Singapore history.
That is so cool.
Wow.
That is very, very, very inspirational.
That's a woman. That's a woman. Like, we're talking 1941 to 1946, that period of time. I can't believe it. She's incredible.
Yeah. And it makes sense then that your dad chose education and had a profound impact on his community as well, which then I'm sure has then had an impact on you in the end, choosing education after, going a roundabout pathway, but finding your real passion then.
Yeah. And it was a little bit hard for him to also get that, because he came to Australia in the end of the 1960s. And when he first came out, his Singapore teaching degree wasn't accepted straight away. So this is it's a bit of a tearjerker for me, this story, because it does make me get a little bit teary. So when he first came out, he was actually given the position of cleaner at Hoxton Park High School. And a year later, his postgraduate degree from Cambridge was accepted, and he was appointed as the English history teacher at the same school.
That's awesome.
So for a guy who's 43, who's had a very successful life overseas, came in, cleaner, following year, teacher at the same school.
That's crazy.
I know.
Humbling,
That's
so
amazing.
humbling. And then, but then doing the work because you've got to put food on the table for your family. And
it taught me so much. And it's why I'm at a school right now where there's a lot of refugees, there's a lot of social disadvantage, because it taught me the importance of education, not only in the survival of the human spirit, but also to have, a family who've gone through the war years and became successful and could get out of poverty and get out of political and social upheaval due to education. You can move countries because of, the status of your educational qualifications taught me so much. And so the commitment of equity, the commitment of ensuring that there's multiculturalism, diversity, inclusion, all of those values, you don't realize that you're learning all of that as a child, but it's certainly something that I got from my father, especially when you think one day you're a cleaner, the next day you're the teacher of the high school.
And that's often people talk about just in leadership that sometimes it's hard to step up from within as a teacher to a head of department. But they're thinking about stepping up in the same profession from a teacher to a head of department. Talk about reestablishing yourself with the students from a cleaner to a teacher. That's a whole new level of reinventing yourself. And
I sort of think about, my father helped set up the Singapore Professional Teachers Association when it first was established in the 1960s. So to have someone who had a reputation over there, but this is what happens when you move countries.
It is.
Sometimes your educational qualifications don't translate with you.
Yeah.
But it taught me so much. And the compassion, the humbleness that he had, it actually showed me how to be a better human being. Because it's not only about just pushing people through. It's about understanding where everybody comes from. So many of the children at my school and their parents, they're probably having very similar experiences. So it's about understanding, empathy, and compassion.
Yep. Love it. That's absolutely beautiful. I was just thinking when you were talking about your grandma and educating the children and kind of having that gap for 5 years. It's probably a long bow to draw, but COVID, lots of people are so concerned that the COVID gap is going to be so significant, and those kids are never going to bounce back from that. But it is possible to bounce back from that.
Absolutely,
and you can't give up hope.
That's right. And if we look at human history, we've done this many times before. Yeah. We've done it through the Spanish War. We've done it through World War I, World War II. And when we think about the psychological fallout of COVID, all of these things are also happening at the same time. And I think we have to be, for me, my experience with my family in education and going through the war years has taught me that you need to be agile. You need to be able to you need to manage change and complexity and uncertainty. And I think we've just thought that that's just a recent occurrence, but it's not really.
No.
So many generations have gone through this, and if we can keep on and have the resilience of our previous generations of educators as well as family, then education's in a really great place moving forward.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that. That's totally reshaping the conversation on education right now and the gap and the impact. So tell us, as the COVID crisis was rolling out, you were chipping away at your PhD. So tell us all about your PhD.
So I probably have the Guinness Book of Records for the longest running PhD.
So actually, her PhD went through the World War I, World War II, and also COVID. Just kidding. That's not the case at all.
No, it feels like it. So it's interesting. I was doing my PhD as I also took on a principalship of my second school during COVID. So my PhD is called Leader Identity, Expertise Development and Influence. And I explored the, principal leadership in New South Wales public schools. And I had six research participants who were principals in New South Wales. And it really taught me a lot. It taught me about the importance of identity development, expertise development, and career span approaches. And, often when you're looking at education systems, and certainly when I was working overseas in the Middle East, the commonality between the UK systems, the American systems, Middle Eastern, African, Indian, is that we all have standards, and all high-performing systems have them. But complying with standards and knowing the theory doesn't necessarily mean that you set up people to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were training, part of the work I was doing was training teachers as well as principals and aspiring leaders. Your identity and your self-concept as an educator is crucial to the success that you're going to have career span. And,
So what do you mean by that? So your identity, so why you chose to come into education, why, or what you stand for, or what do you mean by that?
So your identity is your sense of who you are.
Yeah.
And that can be related to your moral purpose. It can be related to your vision for what you want to achieve. It can also be related to your sense of competency and your expertise in what you do. And I guess if you think about it, it's your mindset. It's your mindset of how you're going to achieve things. And it's also, it helps to bridge the gap between what you do in your optimal state as well as in your typical state. So in our typical state, we may be doing this, blah, 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 in a very busy day. Optimally, we can do this against particular standards. And so when we look at leader identity, we're looking at the inner leader. We're looking at our emotions, our social intelligence, our ability to have deeper self-awareness, the ability to learn, to be agile and manage change and complexity. So it's really about how a leader can move from seeing the world as VUCA, which is that, that military term of, volatile, uncertain, challenging, and blah, to VUCA Prime, which is taking volatility and moving it into vision, taking uncertainty and moving it into understanding, taking challenge and moving it into, clarity, things like that. So the skill set and the ability to learn, how you learn, to cope with challenge, complexity, uncertainty, but also to understand how you operate at the best of times and the worst of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think readiness is a huge part of that, because you can read a lot of theory, but applying it is very different. And it's a bit like, sorry, Whitey, you've never had a baby in your, you've never gestated 9 months through. Right?
But no, he has. Yes, it would
I've
be weird if he said actually
3 times.
Yeah, yes, you've observed it, but to have it, do you know what I mean? You can read the book, How to Expect,
right.
Go through the 9-month journey, and that's the theory. But applying it and living it and embedding it and embodying it are such different things. And one thing we found that with emotional and social intelligence, we say that those interpersonal and the intrapersonal skills are so important, and they are. But what keeps you up at night is yourself. What keeps you up at night is that inner anxiety, the stress, the repeating of a day, feeling like you didn't manage a conversation as well as you could have. It's the stuff that keeps us up at night that links into our self-concept of whether we feel good about ourselves or whether we have a very strong inner critic. And so a lot of the work that, this is actually bridging together Eastern and Western methodologies. But from the Eastern side of things, your development as a person is lifespan. If you're alive, you're still learning. Whereas if we look at careers in terms of leadership, we're on a principal preparation program and we think we've got it. But when people step in the role, that's when the journey begins.
Yes.
So it's about balancing that, the inner and the outer leader.
Yeah, I love it. So it's getting people ready for the job prior to doing the job, but it's also, whilst you're doing the job, being okay with not knowing everything about it, because you're never going to know everything about it, and you've got to learn. There is some component of learning on the job and being okay with your growth and
you need to have readiness. You need to feel that you can cope with challenge.
Yeah.
You need to know that you've got the mindsets and the capabilities, all that potential. Yeah. And I know that, like, for example, when I was in the Middle East, we were using virtual reality technologies, and we would create avatar classes. So you could have those difficult conversations, or even the behavior management, the nightmare behavior management classroom, and practice those really difficult emotional and social interactions, so that when you then went out in the real classroom or the real school, you already knew how to succeed.
That's great. Love it. Definitely need a bit more of that brought into our university university preparation.
That's right. It'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Or at any level. I love this conversation because it applies to everything. It's not just education. I mean, everything you're saying is applicable to any endeavor. Absolutely at all. And which leads me to what your ethos is, that grow great human beings every day. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? Because it strikes me as brilliant, and I really like it, and I can see some things in it, but I want to see what you see in it.
Yeah. So for me, growing great human beings every day is my way of trying to bring together Eastern and Western approaches to why we exist on the planet. And underneath my principal side of things, there's probably a little bit of a hippie. And
Miss Crosby.
Yeah, I don't want to go to work to achieve status quo or to be very good at up and managing. I know I have to achieve things, and I have targets, and I've got system improvement measures that I have to meet. But there's culture. There's people. And when we think of humanness, it's about human potential. No one wants to go to a job where they don't feel appreciated or valued. And that especially includes teachers, because our role is to help empower the next generation of children. And if we want to keep being motivated and inspired, we also have to keep motivating and inspiring.
Yes.
So that means that to grow great human beings, it has to be a mutual growth for our teachers, our SAS staff, as well as our children and our community. And that has to come back down to our cognitive, our emotional, our social, and our spiritual growth together. And for me, it is so important that the spiritual intelligence and the spiritual component comes into what we do, our moral purpose, and creating a culture where everybody feels that they can thrive together. And that means student agency, student voice, teachers balancing that locus of control, and helping children to actually have a strong co-facilitation advocacy role in the learning, the design, the assessment, the reporting processes. So to me, it's all about balancing all of that together.
Great. I love in particular the last two words as well, the everyday. Just the responsibility that puts on you, and the urgency of it, the fact that it should always be the goal, it should always be there.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse. And I think when we came back from COVID, I don't know if you found this in your schools, but morale was really low when we came back. And even doing simple things like, doing your program at the start of the term every year became really challenging. And it was almost like before we came back, our system probably needed an induction to bring everybody together, a huge culture building process first before we did. And that, I think that would have been great. But to grow great human beings every day means that you have to take responsibility for your mindset. If I'm turning up to work every day with a negative attitude, I'm not growing, and neither will the children.
The children will not grow if you're not there. If you don't want to be there, the children will know that they're such intelligent little beings. They know that you don't want to be there.
And it also means that children, as well as parents and all members of the school community, have to be respectful and value our teachers, because it's not one way. It can't be just take. We need to give back as well. So it's about making sure, I guess, what is it? It's a bit like the oxygen on the plane. We all need enough oxygen. And, like the well-being of my staff is absolutely important. At every staff meeting, we start off with well-being. And, could be, what colour are we today? And share that colour. But, it's just important that we are able to know who we are first and bring that into what we do each day.
I love that. I think that conversation about the constant conversation about why the work that we're doing is so important. So why did you choose to be a teacher? Like, that is an ongoing conversation that needs to be happening, because I think that fuels the fire, because we did choose this. We didn't fall into this profession. And I strongly believe that 95% of teachers absolutely chose teaching because of that strong moral purpose to do this amazing work that changes lives. And then the reality sometimes chips away at you as you go along, and it's tough. It's awe-inspiring, but it's also really, really hard work. So I loved what you were talking about before about the best of times. Like what kind of leader are you when all of the conditions are perfect? You've just come back from a holiday and we've just got one extra day of holidays than Mr. White. And right now, I am ready. I am like, just let me at it. I am so excited about this term. So the best of times are about to happen. But then, that your midterm, mid-year, the weather changes, everything, it gets tough. And so what kind of teacher can you be then? And what kind of leader can you be then? And what do you need to keep on fueling your fire during those difficult times so that you know how important you are to the world and the kids in your classroom every day?
Yeah, and that's why the recently I've been doing a pilot with the New South Wales Primary Principals Association around professional reflective supervision, which, by the way, I think is groundbreaking and will totally shift the field of education. But what it's taught me is that every job has stress. Every job has anxiety. But if we identify with the narrative that this job does this to me, then what we do is we take our own choice and our own agency in that. And so all of us can get through any stress and any challenge if we accept that it's our mindset and our ability to cope with stress and challenge. That's the issue. It's never the job.
Yep. No.
So you look at doctors, you look at nurses. I mean, you look at doctors, some people in emergency, they're dealing with people who die every day. But they've got a different purpose and they revision what they're doing. So, that's what I've learned from professional supervision. I think for teachers, if we can take ownership and be given many different ways of how we can cope with challenge and complexity, I think that's the way forward. And I know the focus is often on curriculum reform. It's often on the system, politics, and the compliance aspects. But if I'm bringing it back to leader identity and teacher identity. If we know who we are, why we do what we do, we can do anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. We can learn the curriculum stuff, and I feel like an addition to that, which has been my big leadership learning, has been that I didn't want to step into a leadership role until I knew everything, and then I realized, holy dooly, I'm never going to know everything. So I will never be able to step into a leadership position. And then I looked around me and I was like, I don't think they know everything either. So coming to that realization that you can step into a leadership position as long as you realize it's okay to not know everything, but have that willingness to keep on learning and keep on growing.
I agree, Sharon, because like there's that saying, if only I knew everything like I did when I was 21. My leadership for the first 10 years when I was a principal, pre-COVID, is so different to leadership post-COVID. And it was so hard. But the things that I've learned post-COVID are extraordinary.
Yeah.
I've learned how to build culture much better. I've learned how to handle stress. I've learned how to be resilient in different ways. And I maybe I'm a little bit of a pragmatic optimist, but it's taught me things that I never would have imagined. So all of this is a gift, a hard gift.
Yes.
Hard gift, but it's a gift.
Yeah. I think we will. We're going to bounce back stronger. I think we already are bouncing back stronger. And I think there's a bit of a shifting view that there's been so much learning from that COVID has given us. Yeah.
I mean, I never would have thought I'd say thank you, COVID.
Yeah.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah. No, we can be better because of it, and we made it through it. And then and I think we need to probably acknowledge that some people didn't make it through it. So there's been a significant loss through COVID as well. But for for those of us who have made it through, we can rebuild, and we can we can rebuild stronger and be a better world because of it. Most definitely. What a fantastic conversation. We're going to totally shift gears here, Shanti, and bring it down a notch, because I want to challenge you to play the alphabet game against Mr. Will White. Are you willing to participate in this significant event?
I would love to.
Wonderful.
I love games.
Strap yourself in, my friend. Strap yourself in.
Play a free game.
That's Whitey's 3-year-old saying the alphabet game. He's pretty cute. He also says Diplodocus, the cutest out of any kid in this entire world. I challenge anybody to send me some audio of a cuter kid saying Diplodocus. All right.
There's a challenge for everyone.
There is.
I forgot how this works. Can you run us through the rules again, please?
The alphabet game. The alphabet game is when I'm going to get you to name something, and then I'm going to give you a letter that the something has to start with. For example, name a chocolate starting with C, and you would yell out
Cadbury.
Excellent. And then Shanti would be one up. But unfortunately, Shanti, you're not going to get a point for that unless we need a point later on, and then we're going to give you a point for that.
Hang on a second. No.
Hey. No complaints. Complaints in writing to the host.
Okay.
Whose name starts with S. All right. Here we go. Are we ready?
Yes.
First question. Name something talked about at a staff meeting starting with L.
Losers?
Oh. What did you say?
He said losers. I'm not accepting that because nobody would talk about losers.
Oh,
no.
Well, this is. I was going to say legions, but that's due to
legions.
Yes.
Okay. No, I'm going to accept that actually, Shanti, because sometimes we've got to talk about the smallpox, and we've got to talk about the chickenpox lesions.
Yes.
We've got to talk about.
We actually just had a breakout of hand, mouth.
Hand, foot, mouth.
Yep.
Lesions. Exactly.
We're
talking about.
I don't.
Yep.
I'm starting to think that the odds are stacked against me here.
No, never. So, ting. That was a ting. That's a ting for Shanti. Well done, Shanti. You're off on a roll. All right, here we go.
Best of 3, yeah?
Something. It's a best of 3, by the way. So if you get this one, Shanti, you just win.
Okay.
All right. So, name something a teacher does on their holiday starting with W.
Well-being.
Oh.
I'm gonna give you an opportunity to expand on that, Shanti. Oh, sorry. The crowd is really sorry. The crowd's really excited.
Just on.
Guys, come on, quieten down.
Well-being.
Gosh, sit down at the back.
Wine.
Yep. I knew we'd get back to wine somehow. Well done, Shanti.
Yes,
well done. Well, there you go, Mr. White.
More because I feel so sorry.
No, don't ever feel sorry for Mr. White. It's okay.
Tip of the hat. You did very well.
He did well, and we can't break that that record that he has been able to keep now for. This is our 4th season, Shanti. He's 4 seasons. He hasn't got a win yet.
No way.
It's really good for my well-being.
But the word is yet. The word is yet. I have a growth mindset, and I will get there.
Yes.
He'll get there. He'll get there one day. I love your optimism, Mr. White. All right. So, Shanti, we have absolutely loved being able to talk to you. Can you tell us, so if people would like to know more about the leadership frameworks that you're talking about, how could they access that?
So what I can do, Sharon and Will, is give you a link to my PhD, and that will give people the opportunity to read it. But there's also really great stuff that's happening out there in the space of leadership and well-being. For example, there's a new field called professional supervision and educational leadership, which is really giving an opportunity for teachers and leaders, educational leaders, to go through something that is more expansive than coaching and mentoring. And the focus is on proactive well-being, optimal leadership, optimal teaching practice, but also deep reflection around professional practice. And, that's something that I'm really thinking is a really amazing shift for our profession. Most of the time, we have teachers and school leaders who are going through a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and, they fall apart. We pick up the pieces at the end. But there is a new field that is emerging that is designed to proactively support educators. And so, I just think that's something that will be wonderful for teachers and leaders to explore as well.
Absolutely. And then, and because of that, students will thrive when their teachers and leaders are thriving as well.
Because you've got the oxygen. You've got the oxygen on the plane. You're not deficit. You're always going to be in that full motivated mode.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, we are going to, we're definitely going to send out that link for Shanti's PhD, and then any other links that Shanti can provide for us, so that we can get people being able to access those great resources and keep the oxygen flowing for them and their teaching teams.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys.
Oh, it's been so wonderful to talk to you, Shanti.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's always wonderful to see you, Mr. White.
And you, Mrs. Angel.
Oh, stop it.
Stop it.
All right. Have a great term. We're going to see everybody next week. Thank you, Shanti.
Thank you, Shanti. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Powered by Riverside.